I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole!
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time, our dear Ramblers, we are traveling back to 1991 to take a look at the Tony Scott and Joel Silver joint that is The Last Boy Scout, featuring Bruce Willis, Damon Wayans, and a bunch of other hot character actors of the time, I think you could say. This is a film that means a lot to us, does it not, George?
It is a classic of the late 80s, early 90s. It's Brucey at the height of his fame. I wouldn't say this film means a lot to me, but we'll get into that.
I think we are going to get into that, and because it's 91, I think what you can already see, ladies and gentlemen, is that George and I were in very different places in 1991. So this film does actually mean a lot to me. Okay, so we're going to get into that. But this is, it's Retro Ramble. You know what to expect if you've listened before. If you've not listened before, what can people expect? We're two brothers. We're catching up on the films of our youth, George. There's going to be some swearing. What else does a first-time listener need to know?
It's a light-hearted review at the films we grew up with. So we're going into these films in detail. So there will be spoilers from the very off. Part of that light-hearted nature, we're going to have some fun. There'll probably be some bad impressions, some mild childish language. That's about it, really.
Okay, so we got, as we mentioned, it's a Tony Scott film. A great director who gave us Top Gun, True Romance, and a whole lot of other stuff. It's Joel Silver, who comes up a lot on this podcast because Joel Silver is responsible for a lot of our childhood memories. And Action Jackson. We just covered that on the Patreon episode. So I feel like we've done quite a bit of funny, enjoyable Patreon episodes over the summer. So it's good to be back on the usual monthly Retro Ramble. So George, are you ready with the trailer?
I am.
This ain't no game, Flash.
Joe Hallenbeck's a private detective who's run out of luck.
If you touch me again, I'll kill you.
2 for 2.
Told you.
Jimmy Dix
I like Prince.
is an ex-quarterback who was thrown out of football.
Another tragic tale of wasted youth. You're nobody. Shh. Don't tell anyone.
They were trying to clean up their acts
You reckon? I'll dust it.
when they got dragged into the dirty world of sports corruption.
So you're gonna bribe some senators to legalize gambling?
Legalize sports gambling. Now,
Son, we're going to a ball game.
they've got one shot
What am I gonna do? Point it at the bad guys and shoot!
to get the goods on the bad guys.
Just once, I would like to hear you scream. Play some rap music. Like these, man. Take your best shot.
If they don't kill each other first.
That was a bomb? Either that or a hell of a factory recall.
Bruce Willis, Damon Wayans, The Last Boy Scout.
Danger's my middle name. Mine's Cornelius. Tell anybody I kill you.
Wow. A film brought to us by Geffen Pictures. Geffen, also the record label behind Guns N' Roses, for all you GNR fans out there.
Fact fans.
So, yeah, George, I don't know about you, but I think where we need to start, especially considering the the tone you used in the intro is our first memories of this film, because for me, this is a big film. This is a film that I felt like, for me, I didn't see it at the cinema, but I almost felt like it was a cinematic film. It was one of the most cinematic films I saw on VHS, because I remember it as being, it was after all of the 80s films, but it was kind of like a celebration of that, but with, obviously we're going to touch on it in this episode, the script, the jokes, the one-liners, and they almost distract you from the unfiltered misogyny and ridiculous other stuff that's going on in this film. I'm just waiting for the next line in parts, but what are your memories about this? Because for me, I'm like, I love this film. I have this on like a rewatch with all the other films it's linked with. Like, I would put it in the same basket as Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop. I think it's that level of action film.
Yeah, it's a weird one for me. My memories of it are I remember watching it in bits, like, in typical sort of fashion, being round at someone's house and seeing, like, the last half hour or the middle half hour or something like that. So my memories of it are watching it in bits, and for some reason I have my lasting memory of it. I remember it looking, I mean, it's probably just the quality of the recording, but I just remember it looking like a cheap TV movie, which is unfair. It's a disservice to Tony Scott, because obviously he's a fantastic visual director. And this time round, I did appreciate, it is quite, he never makes a boring looking film. But yeah, I don't know. It might have just been the recording off TV, but it might have been an old tape, but it just wasn't the best sort of first impression. And I think it probably wasn't until, and I remember everyone quoting, it is very quotable. And I remember, like, the lines, like, touch me again, I'll kill you, and stuff like that. And I do remember it has got some very, dare I say, iconic moments, very memorable moments. But yeah, for some reason, I just don't have a fondness for this film as much as I see it as I'm sort of jumping right into the end, but I don't have a fondness for it as much as I do as in terms of Shane Black's work, in terms of Brucey's work. I'd say it's mid-tier Brucey, and it's kind of mid-tier Tony Scott. I think they've all collectively done better films. I think there's a lot to enjoy in this, and I watched it the other night for the first time in good few years. I remember watching it at uni and enjoying it, but yeah, it's not something I go back to as often as Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, and the likes of that.
Because when was Lethal Weapon 3? Was that, I want to say that was like 95, or was it later?
93, I think.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I feel
similar
like,
time.
Yeah, but I feel like when we were at that point, like 93, that obviously it was, further down the line. But I felt, for me, this was a celebration of Brucey. It was like, did you like it? It is that sort of pitch. It's like, did you like Bruce Willis in Die Hard? Yes. Do you like Lethal Weapon? Yes. Do you like Shane Black's, script? Yes.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna love this film. What took me out of it going back this time was the misogyny, and the smoke.
Yeah.
So there's all of that. But I think what I thought stuck out to me this time was Tony Scott's production values, plus the fact I felt like what he was trying to do, and this is only this time. I didn't get this when I was younger. I think I agree with you. When I was younger, this passed us by as a completely passable, enjoyable, don't regret renting it type VHS, whereas now going back to it, I see it with more slightly adult, wiser eyes, and I'm like, they were trying to keep the party going in terms of the 80s actioner, but throwing in a higher level script, or putting more time and effort into the script.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. Should we get into production chat now?
Let's jump into the retro yet very modern car and just drive down a cliff to production chat swimming pool.
So yeah, you would think with those four key players, a Joel Silver picture, and as we've touched on, this is the man that gave us produced Predator, Lethal Weapon, the Matrix series, Action Jackson. You know, he's a Demolition Man. You know, he's a renowned action director. Tony Scott, you know, great action director. Obviously, Top Gun. You know, did loads of Bruckheimer films. Beverly Hills Cop 2, Crimson Tide,
True Romance.
True Romance, obviously. Bruce Willis, you know, needs no introduction, and Shane Black. So for those who aren't aware, or if you haven't listened to previous episodes of Retro Ramble, so Shane Black started off as a legendary screenwriter and a bit part actor. So he was
Hawkins.
Hawkins, yeah, the geeky guy in Predator, but he made his living as a very quick rising star screenwriter, pretty much under the sort of mentorship of producer Joel Silver. So he wrote Lethal Weapon, I think around 21 years old. You can go back to our episode and listen, you know, for more info on that. But yeah, he was a very talented scriptwriter, rose through Hollywood very quickly. I think with Lethal Weapon 2, he became a little bit disillusioned because he thought he was untouchable, but then they brought somebody else in to rewrite his script on Lethal Weapon 2. And round about this time, sort of early or like late 80s, early 90s, he was in a bit of a funk. He'd split up with his partner at the time, and he channeled in that sort of disillusionment and unhappiness into this script. And when he put it onto market, he was still a hot name. So it got into
this Last Boy Scout you're talking about.
Yeah. So
that kind of explains the misogyny and hate of women type vibe.
Yes. I was going to say it kind of makes sense. So yeah, he ended up selling it to Joel Silver for, at the time, a record-breaking 1.75 million. Despite Sony offering 2 million for it. Obviously, he'd had a relationship with Joel Silver. The man had given him his big break, so he's like, "No, I want to work with Joel again." And yeah, I say it was record breaking for a script to go that high. The budget was 40 million, which was relatively high for its time, but I think T2 was the same year, and that became the record breaker for the most expensive film ever made at that time. But there was a lot of pressure on this film because there was the momentum of Brucey. So obviously by this point he'd done Die Hard and Die Hard 2. He had also made a film that we've got lined up on our Retro Ramble Revelations, was Hudson Hawk.
A film we've not seen. Sorry, what was that?
A Hudson Hawk. So a film we've not seen, but that was a massive flop. And that was a Bruce Willis, Joel Silver production. So they were keen to, you know, get their careers back on track and have a hit. So that's why a lot of money was thrown at it. They had the Shane Black script, and they ended up hiring, you know, who's a reliable action director, Tony Scott. Sadly, because you had lots of strong personalities, everyone hated working on this film, and apparently it was an absolute disaster behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, can I just pick up on that? Because, like, obviously I have a lot of love for this film. I think my love of this film is it's like a nostalgic victory lap. So it's what I was saying to you before. It's like, you like Die Hard, you like Bruce Willis, you like Shane Black scripts, you like all of that. Imagine a film where none of the film makes sense, but you've got all of that. It's like when you were listening, all the royalty involved, Tony Scott, Joel Silver, Bruce Willis. Even Damon Wayne's doing a good performance, a young Halle Berry, and a bunch of other character actors we've all seen before, or maybe we've only seen them in this film. But like the fact that they all came together and what we got was okay. You know, like I remember this film for being funny. I think this film is funnier than it has more laugh out loud jokey moments and better writing than Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, but Die Hard's not that type of film. But you know, like it's up there with Beverly Hills Cop for me in terms of its comedy, but there's a lot of problems with it, so it's not as good as those films. I hear what you're saying. It's like there was so much talent involved, so the fact you're telling me that there was fighting behind the scenes doesn't surprise me, because it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, apparently this is from one of the assistant directors I think he was on a podcast recently, James W. Scotch DePole. I think that's how you pronounce it. But one of the assistant directors basically came out and said,
pronounce it. But
he described it as an overabundance of alpha males on the project. And he said, Bruce was at the height of his stardom, so was Joel, so was Tony, and so was Shane. There was a lot of people who had a lot of opinions about what to do. There was some heated early 90s testosterone-charged personalities on the line. It was a charged environment, shall we say. So, yeah, I think, obviously Bruce Willis has a bit of a reputation for being difficult, and I think this was Brucey at the height of his fame. He's off on the back of two diehards, and I think he's starting to throw his weight around a bit, behind the scenes.
He'd made quite a few other films, wasn't he? He was really starting to make films at this point, wasn't he?
Yeah,
because anything you want to say about Bruce Willis is he put out an enormous volume of films, and later on in his career, he didn't stop, even if the quality dipped. He was like, no, he's a two films a year type of guy, wasn't he?
Well, in his later years, he was doing, I think, felt like 10 movies a year. But I think they were saying a lot of that was he was, trying to create a bit of a pension because of his ill health. He was just trying to bring the money in. But yeah, I think this film for me is, I think I do appreciate it more now. I've seen obviously, so Shane Black was just a scriptwriter, but he's now gone on to, he made his directorial debut with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think that was 2006. And then he's done Iron Man 3, which was, I think the first $1 billion Marvel film. And he's done The Nice Guys, which Charlie and I have talked about our love for in the past. And he's also done The Predator, which Charlie and I have shared our hatred about in the past. But he is a very reliable director when it comes to the buddy, the mismatched buddy sort of dynamic. And I think my appreciation of films like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys, going back and watching this, I do appreciate there is some great writing, and he is very good at that homage to film noir and those sort of like the washed up schlubby private detective. And I've read a lot of private detective novels whilst he was sort of wallowing in his self-loathing for this, and then he would go back to and revisit those old sort of pulpy noir books for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and even The Nice Guys. So it is his sweet spot, I think. And Brucey, let's be honest, Brucey does it with his hands tied behind his back, that weary, washed up, sardonic anti-hero. He does it brilliantly.
I think I did make a note of this. It's like, I think it was totally conceivable is that The Last Boy Scout is basically a fever dream that John McClane is having when he's knocked out by Hans Gruber's brother. Do you know what I mean? Because he's almost, when he's got the guns and he's going in slow motion and the guns are making the same noises that they only do in films involving Bruce Willis shooting
and
guns.
And Joel Silver.
That amazing noise. That's why I was saying it's cinematic. And he's like, the look on his face. George recently shared with me the amazing work, which you should check out, listeners, on YouTube, is it Die Hard 12, where it's Ben Stiller doing his amazing Bruce Willis impression, and he's doing all the squinty-eyed stuff. It's like Brucey at his best. I think I hit pause yesterday and he's lying on the floor and he's got a revolver in one hand and a shotgun in one hand and 150% Bruce Willis look on his face, because obviously it's Bruce Willis, but he's, the face I'm talking about. Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna, so that's why, for me, I don't know if you got it this time going around, but like, for me, going back to this film, like, I danced through this film. I had a lot of problems with my devices trying to watch it, devices arguing with each other, running out of battery, blah, blah, blah. So I actually got cut in the middle and I was like, I need to keep watching. I wanted to keep watching. And I think I got on my computer and continued watching type thing. Because I don't know, this Retro Ramble podcast, a lot of it is about nostalgia, and there's a lot of the nostalgia that Retro Ramble is all about in this film. A lot of it doesn't work. We are talking about legalizing gambling in American football, which how do you make a plot out of that? It seems like you could have thrown nukes and world threat, like really big threats into this, and it seems such a small idea.
Well, I was going to say, because we're so, I mean, I'm
Mission
not
Impossible. Anybody?
Well, I was going to say, I'm not much of a sports guy, but you know, considering how bamboozled we are in UK environment by like gambling, sports gambling, and you know, all these ads. Whenever the rare times I do watch things like football and it's half time and you're bombarded by Ray Winston's floating head going, "Oh, go on, spend some money."
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, you know, and I'm just like, so yeah, it feels like, I agree, it feels like a very quaint idea, and it feels like surely there's more of a, you know, a cover up than this. Surely, like, you know, the evil senator's got something, you know, he's covering up something else.
I was like, when is he going to launch the nukes or poison the water supply of California? No, I'm just going to legalize gambling.
Yeah,
for $6 million. For $6 million.
Well, apparently it's quite funny considering they paid, you know, a record amount for the script, because Shane Black has admitted in recent years that it's the most rewriting he did on one of his scripts than any others, and apparently changed a lot. And again, this goes back to, I think, Bruce Willis's ego, because Shane Black was saying there was tremendous pressure from the studio to get Bruce Willis and have a follow-up to Die Hard, but Bruce Willis was reluctant because he was just like, this whole movie's about me saving my wife. I've just done that twice in Die Hard. So originally in the original script, Joe Hallenbach's wife was a much bigger role in it and much more active in it all the way through. But to make it less like Die Hard, they've obviously made that role of the wife smaller. And as you say, if anything, that's made it more problematic because she, you know, it is very misogynistic. And they pretty much changed the second half of the film. Apparently there was going to be like a boat chase. It was more about that corrupt senator and his son, and things like that. So it's and there was a lot more about the evil villain Milo. Is it Milo? Yeah, the guy who's in it is brilliant in this, but he seems to just crop up halfway through. It's like, "Hello, Joseph," and you're like, well, "This guy's brilliant. Where did he come from?"
Well, especially since it's like, I think, because I only watched this yesterday. I only finished this yesterday. I started the other day. That there's 4 other goon standoffs.
There's a lot of goons before you get that, yeah.
And like, I don't know about you, because I think we've become accustomed to now when we rewatch these films, is like, we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to go. We're actually looking out for character actors that we might have missed the first time around when we were younger. And that's because they were character actors. Whereas now I'm looking for the guy that Bruce Willis kills with one punch, and I'm looking for this guy who uses full names to address people. Milo, great bad guy. And yeah, it really stuck out this time. I was like, there's the bit where there's the bit they smack him on the head. You know, the first meeting with the goons before Corey gets killed. Then there's another meeting with the goons. Then the goons catch up with Damon Wayans. You know, so, and then there's another thing, and then they introduce Milo. So it is like he could have been introduced earlier, and but now we're starting to pick it apart. I do get the feeling that there's personalities, animosity going on, but I don't know. Watching this recently, just the last watch of this, I got carried along by the banter. Like, oh
no, don't get me wrong.
It's like, I think this is a great lesson in, it shows why a good script is so important, and I think it's worth every penny, because there's a really shitty scene, that one I was talking about, where Damon Wayans is taken by those guys, they throw him on a car, and then they just walk away, even though they can see he's survived. It's not really well shot, but the first line, they're kicking the shit out, and he's like, hold on a minute, I can't decide which one of you looks most like my dick. And it's just like, it just stuck in my head. Like you were talking about Hit Me Again, and everything in this, it's foul-mouthed. The scenes with the daughter are a bit, did we really need to teach a girl that young all of those naughty words?
Yeah, but I've got, what am I calling it? The blackout drinking game. It's sort of like self-loathing, chain-smoking lead, check. Fearless, sassy child character, check.
Check, yeah.
Christmas reference, check.
You ruined your life, didn't you? Check. But
yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Christmas thing, because apparently, I was saying to you before, this was a big move. When I can remember watching this on VHS and regretting not seeing it at the cinema, because I'm talking about that Joel Silver explosion gunshot sound. It's like it cut, and with Tony Scott, it came across really cinematic. And I was like, why didn't I see the cinema? And doing a bit of research, this was a Christmas film that flopped, and shot in LA. It's difficult to convince people that it's a Christmas film in LA. And
well, outside of that reference to Satan Claus, is there any other reference to?
But this is. I'm eventually getting to my point. Iron Man 3. Again, it's Christmas. Is it? Like, if you're making a Christmas film, put some effort into it. If you're making a Christmas film in LA, it's like, it just reminds me of watching Neighbours when we were teenagers. It's like, it's Christmas in Australia. There's no snow. It doesn't look like Christmas. I get it. I get it in LA that there's not going to be snow falling, but like, at least put some effort into it, because there's Satan Claus, and I think that's the only reference that's made. And this is a film that came out at Christmas, so it bombed for that reasons. But I think, to summarize, my positivity about this film is it reminds me of all those other films.
Well, if you think about, I think that obviously, it might be also the difference in our opinion, and we're completely allowed to have a difference of opinion on this podcast. Charlie and I don't always agree with everything, but it might have just been because age-wise, you're 4 years older. You might have just been in that zeitgeist swept up at the moment. Whereas in 91, I was probably still obsessing over Batman and probably a little bit of Terminator 2. So they were my sort of main focuses in life at that time. And I probably I didn't properly watch this maybe till sort of later in the 90s.
Yeah, I think because of the age difference, it is significant. It's 4 years. And I think, to split our listeners down the middle, I'm more in the camp that I think you probably look at these films a bit more tongue-in-cheek. I think because you arrived at them when the period was slightly more over, and I was 11 when this came out, So like, I still, in my mind's eye, I have an 11-year-old's appearance. Whereas I think you probably picked this up when you were like, maybe like when it had passed, first of all, and you were older. So you were like, and you were studying film. So you were like, okay, yeah, it's a great script, but it's this, it's that, Whereas I was still 11. Explosions, car chases, boobs. I was like, sold. So I think
it's weird though. But you look back though, and you look at other films like that. That came out on the same time. I say T2. Obviously, Terminator 2 is in it's one of my favorite films, and it's one of the best films ever made.
One of the best sci-fi films ever made.
And then there's obviously Point Break, same year, 91. And for some reason, I have, a lot of love for that film. So it's funny how certain films stick with you from different eras, probably for different reasons. I suppose that's just the power of nostalgia, baby.
Yeah, I think there's something going on in Point Break that was so far away. It's like
it's so original.
There's that, and also, I mean, just to quickly dip into the Point Break rabbit hole, is like in this, there's rain, it's American football, and they are taking the piss out of American football. By the way, at the beginning, I didn't get that the first watch. Don't know if you did.
What the whole big song about football?
Yeah, it's an entire satire on how ridiculous what you and I have had to put up with, what Sky Sports has to do every freaking year. Is the season's coming, let's make it sexy, let's make it big, let's put on a show, let's show people that it's a big deal, rather than just, okay, the teams are coming out. There's that. But it is satire, apparently, at the start of this film. But whereas what you see in Point Break is you see gorgeous Keanu Reeves and
gorgeous
Laurie Petty, Patrick Persuade Me, and an amazing plot, and so original. And I don't know, that film's extra special. But I would take Point Break and I would put that above, like there's the Die Hards, there's Lethal Weapons, the Beverly Hills Cop, because they're cop film villain things, they go into a certain thing, whereas Point Break feels in a different section somewhere.
I mean, I do have one question. Let's get into sort of general sort of film notes. It's a great opening, that football game, and it's very memorable. I don't remember there being that many homicides. I just remember the footballer like killing himself at the end. I don't remember him shooting loads of people as he's going to score the touchdown. But my first question I was going to have, I mean, and maybe it's probably just because it's a Tony Scott film. If it's raining that hard, would they not call off the game? It seems like comically like biblical, the amount of rain that you've got.
I think to answer your question, this entire scene is biblical. And considering in Act 3, Milo's in an enlightened position, lights are exploding, they're everywhere. This has got to be one of the darkest, most poorly lit stadiums I've ever seen. So, like, whenever there's something happening, the act, it's like, it's dramatic license 101. But like,
it's pure Tony Scott, isn't it? It's pure Tony Scott.
It's beautiful Tony Scott. It is. It's like, I think, because this is the difference between George and I. George can take an expert eye to a film going, that kind of doesn't make sense. Whereas I will get washed away. Give me a good soundtrack and some snappy lines and some smoke and mirrors, and that's what this film has a lot of. It has a lot of dry
Tony
eyes.
Scott loves a bit of smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. So I think I was carried away, but even this time I was like, well, you guys don't really like women. Shut up. But his wife is a strong female character. His wife cheats on him with
his best friend.
With his best friend, who then dies. And at the end, he says, what does he say to her? I'd spit on you, but the police are around. Yeah, so there's a very interesting portrayal of women in this film. They either die or they're broken somehow. But so what were we talking about? Yeah, so opening scene. So he's got I just love that it's like you have to do. Who is he talking to? It's
Milo. It's because he says like he calls him by his full name.
It's about the game.
Yeah,
is that what it's about? It's about.
Well,
but I'm like, but why? Because I know that
there's a lot of money riding on him. I think.
No,
I think
but
he has
I know,
to.
But
it's sort of like It's a bit like the boxer, not throwing the fight. It's like, you have to win this.
No, I get it. It's match fixing. Yeah. I get it. It's that, but it's like it's not part of the grander plot.
It's not.
Which is like Reynard or Baynard or whatever his name is who gets hit in the face. It's not about like convincing that senator to legalize gambling. Because I mean, as you were just saying about, imagine betting shots every 20 yards on British high streets. What could possibly go wrong? This was actually when it happened. That it's fun to imagine a world that before legalized gambling, as Bruce highlights at the end, it was all run by the fucking mob, and it would have been the same in the UK. So it's weird. So what was Milo's play? It was like, you got to throw this game.
No, I think he's got to win it, and that's why it's sort of like, well, I'll just shoot everyone.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? It's like you should throw that. It would make more sense because that's what can't remember the footballer, the keeper, the Liverpool keeper that got done for match fixing. But it was like they weren't stupid. They were like,
was it Bruce Grobbelaar?
Yeah, Bruce Grobbelaar. They were much clever. They were like, so just let the goals in. They weren't like, talking to strikers going, you need to put 7 in. They were like, could you just let some in? And that's why this stuck out to me. I was like, wouldn't it be easier instead of shooting people to just be really shit?
Drop the ball?
Exactly. Give the ball to the opposition in the last 10 minutes type thing. So, but that is, we've talked about it before on the podcast a few times. Tony Scott made his mark in music videos, and the idea of
and TV commercials
and the idea of an American footballer shooting people to score a try is somewhere in the cheese dream world of TV commercials and music videos of the early 90s, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, just jumping to that next scene with Brucey discovering his cheating wife, I do love the brutal black dialogue of, how long have we been friends, Joe? I'd say until you started fucking my wife.
Yeah.
With Bruce McGill, he's one of those character actors that we love to crop up in films.
Time Cop is for me, if I've got my character acting things lined up, probably his biggest role in terms of his character acting. I mean, he's probably been a lead in some films that you and I've never watched.
Well, I say Bruce McGill is like constantly turning up in films. He's I mean, he's been in everything. But yes, his film credits include Ali, The Inside of Time Cop, My Cousin Vinny, and Ride Along and Ride Along 2.
Did you not get the feeling that after he died, the police lieutenant was kind of being ADR by him, that they sounded identical? I was like, is that his brother? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is I feel like these were the films that Michael Bay was watching when he was a film student, because there's a lot of Twilight shooting. Beautiful LA.
There is that absolute juxtaposition. It goes from darkest blue, rainy football to sun-scorched LA, where Bruce is asleep in his car and everything's bright orange. You're like, woo!
Everything's like either, as you say, deepest, darkest night, or it's just the sun's about to go down, or it's first thing in the morning. And it's like the whole film is shot in those areas in this way. I don't think it was deliberate, but it's like the rest of us get up and go to work. And it's true. It's like these films happen when the rest of the world is working. Like we work, we go to sleep. And when we're asleep, Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans are protecting the world from illegalized gambling. I'm not sure, but a serious threat.
So let's talk about Damon Wayans. So I thought it does get better, but I think his acting in his first few scenes is atrocious. Like it really feels.
Totally agree. And I am sorry, but I'm gonna have to point the finger at the director for this. We've seen him in Living Color. We know he can deliver. We know he can deliver it live under pressure. I feel like this was a bit of a diversion for him, and he was probably a bit nervous. And I put down it is ropey. But I mean, was this shot in a linear fashion? Because it is his early scenes that are ropey, and he gets better. So
well, that's it. He does eventually, as you say, it's one of the best bits of the film. He does. It is a really good bickering odd couple dynamic that him and Brucey have. But it's funny that I've put, even with 3 minutes of screen time, you can see Halle Berry is going to be a star, and she has a tiny role, but she outacts Damon Wayans in that initial club scene. And obviously Damon Wayans does have a little bit of heavy lifting, a sad backstory. But yeah, it just seems like that first meeting with Bruce Willis, it's just a little bit ropey.
I felt he had too much baggage. Poor Damon, Jimmy Dix. Can we get enough dick jokes in this film? Maybe we're going to put Dick in one of the characters' name. So yeah, I felt he had too much, because the fact that he $1 Million Arm lost his career
lost his son.
No, but this is the thing. Lost his career because of gambling. It would have been different. That's the thing that jived with me, because I felt like they were trying to tie it in with a grander plot, and they didn't need to, because imagine this, because this is where it gets weird. It's like the fact that it was because of gambling didn't sit well with me. It would be much better if it was like he lost his job because of drinking, because he lost his son.
Yeah.
That was it. It was like that would it. Just
go with cut out that bit, because they say, oh yeah, gambling and alleged drug abuse. It's like just go with the drug abuse.
But it's just I don't see the two. No, but there's three things, because it's like he lost his wife and son in a car accident. Then he also got hooked to drugs, and he's also a gambler. So it's like these three things. It's like pick one as a result of the other. So I felt that was too heavy-handed, and that, to me, what you were saying to earlier, stinks of rewrites.
But I do have a question, Charlie. Where can I buy Damon Wayans' little elf hat that he wears at the start?
Oh, I've actually got in my notes, let's talk about wardrobe. Just Damon Wayans. Nobody else. Everyone else is dressed like that should be 1991.
So early 90s. It's fabulous.
It's like you've got everybody else is like, yeah, we've seen Die Hard, we've seen Lethal Weapon, we know how to dress as a washed-up cop or a gangland or a hoodlum or even a mob boss. Damon Wayans has just stepped off Color Me Bad video, and he doesn't.
It's fabulous. It really is.
He's wearing a jacket with tassels at one point.
Yeah, leather pants, jacket with tassels, and a little nightcap. It's a little sort of elf cap that you, and then obviously he changes into his Diet Coke little red trilby type thing.
I feel, and I mean no disrespect to him, that I felt that was layering, that they were like, okay, his character needs more.
Yeah,
because
he needs to be outrageous.
And I also think that this is, if we look back at our buddy cop genre, this is the Chris Rock, it's the zany buddy character. You've got the Bruce Willis doing the Brucey, what we love him for. And I think we can get onto this in a minute, or we can get onto it now. I love this film because it is Brucey. We talk about Fifth Element sometimes. There was a moment, there was a time in his career where later on in his career he did not deliver. This is the moment where he's, as you say, one hand behind his back, he's delivering. And I think that has a lot. To cut a long story short, I think that's what the wardrobe's about, is that how do we make it believable that Damon Wayans can stand aside to Bruce Willis in this film, give him a crazy wardrobe?
Yeah. Bruce Willis, Joe Hallenbach's backstory. So obviously they talk about
Secret Service.
He saved the president's life.
Just a really simple backstory.
Is it Jimmy Carter? Is it history's greatest monster?
It looks like a character who's made to. Is it actually Jimmy Carter, or is it an actor who looks like Jimmy Carter?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe our American listeners can tell us, because it does look like Jimmy Carter.
They never say Jimmy Carter, but I'm sure it looks like it's a Jimmy Carter lookalike. It's like, surely you could pick a better president than Jimmy Carter.
He picked America's worst. Yeah, exactly. Stinking of The Simpsons. But there's a lot of flashbacks. The fact is that there's, again, rewrites, whatever you want to blame, but like he's got two flashbacks. So there's the one with the senator beating the girl where he steps in Secret Service, and then there's the other flashback where he saves the president. So it's like, come on. I mean, what do you think?
We've been told he saved the president. We still have to see it.
Yeah, I know, but it's like he's got two different flashback stories. It's like, what do you think this is? Bloodsport? Come on. I mean,
yeah. But yeah, I do like the fact that they've tried to age up,
make him
Brucey.
Look younger.
Well, they've tried to make him look younger in the flashbacks by just having him clean shaven and a shorter haircut. And yeah, the fact that at one point Brucey says, "Oh, I am very old," is like, actually, you're looking pretty good there, Brucey.
You've seen him at the end when he's grown his hair out, and he's obviously got the perfect life, and he's got his daughter saying "Yes, sir," which I'm sorry, but no matter how it's if I ever see a teenage or any sort of child of any age saying "Yes, sir" to their parents, all I think is fascism. I think it's a terrible. You should never have to refer to your parents like that. So anyway, I just thought it was a very weird. But he looks amazing at the end of this. He's like refreshed. The scars are kind of dulled down, whatever, because he does look broken in this film. It's like, give me a sort of Bruce Willis Die Hard, but not too much Die Hard. But at the end, he's grown his hair out, because I remember you saying to me a number of times, George, in his later career, you were sad to see him just shave it off. Maybe it was the Die Hard 4. It was like, because he still had hair, but he was like, no, just gonna.
Well, apparently he is definitely. He's wearing a piece in this. He's definitely wearing a hairpiece, and
it's a lovely hairpiece. Look, he's obviously walking in the footsteps of Sean Connery.
Yeah,
it's a lovely hairpiece.
Whereas I think it's a few years later. I think it's Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is 95, where he embraces the, yes, I'm my hair is going, and then it just obviously recedes more and more. So is there anything else you want to say before we look at what could have been?
For me, before we get into coulda, woulda, shoulda, what you were saying before about the whole Raymond Chandler noir, blah blah blah. I actually think, apart from the fucking fact that it's about gambling and American football, for me, this is a good detective film. And I think that's why I like it, because I like my Bosch. For me, this is a LA detective story set in LA, so it ticks a lot of boxes for me. I think it's good in those respects. So, enough.
I mean, I think considering how, all the reports that everyone says they hated working on it, and apparently it was really brought together in the edit. Legendary editor Stuart Baird, who we've chatted about before on the podcast, because he was behind the edits on Superman, Lethal Weapon. He was basically Richard Donner's go-to editor, but he also brought Demolition Man together in the edit. And Yeah, so I think apparently they had, and Tony Scott, unsurprisingly, films a lot of footage. So apparently it was a real job to bring it together into a coherent state. But yeah, I think considering how disastrous some people are saying it was behind the scenes, I think it's still a perfectly decent action film. Yes, as you say, misogynistic, but that trademark Shane Black humor and that Joel Silver, Tony Scott action explosion sheen. So yeah, there's a lot to enjoy. I watched it the other night and I was like, I'm probably going to end up watching this in two halves. And I sat through and watched the whole thing. I ended up pouring myself a whiskey and got stuck in just so I could sort of, get in the mindset of a washed up private eye.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about there's a lot of big actors, there's a lot of big directors, but I'm sure there's other people that could have been considered for the role. And I've got Jeff and Celine who are asking that same question.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So Coulda Woulda Shoulda is where George enlightens us on actors, pretty much actors, but sometimes directors, who was considered, who was involved in the making of this movie, but didn't get involved or got kicked out for whatever reason.
Got a few here. So in terms of directing duties, apparently John McTiernan, so director of Die Hard and Predator.
All I'm hearing is evil sleigh bells.
Yeah. Or John McTiernan declined to direct this film. In terms of the lead roles, apparently Jack Nicholson was first choice for Joe Hallenbeck, which I can see as obviously. I mean, Jack would have
been quite younger back then.
He would have been in his 50s, but it would have. I imagine
after Batman.
After Batman, but he's obviously played. He's played Private Eyes in the past, obviously Chinatown and The Two Jakes and stuff like that. So I think he could pull off that weary, hard drinking, cynical Private Eye. I think he would smash it. But it'll be interesting to see how him trying to pull off some of the diving around with two guns, going rah 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 rah.
Well, no, the thing is, you say that, but I think he would give it his best. But I think he's that diverse an actor at that age. I would have loved to have seen in the Marcone role. You could have made that role bigger. Like you could have combined the Marcone and Milo role and given it to Jack Nicholson.
Yeah,
the owner.
Yeah,
that could have been interesting. That I think maybe you still always need to have Milo, Bob, Gunn, but I think or maybe combine. I don't know. I think. But
the guy
I'm remembering Nicholson as being older, I guess.
The guy who plays Marcone seems a bit of a caricature, doesn't he? He seems a bit too larger than life. Like, I'm a bit Texan. Ugh.
Yeah, I think he sticks out. It's like I think where we were at, even back then with cinema, I would have preferred a more Alan Rickman type villain for that role. It's like, I've bought this football team. We need to make money. We could make billions if we legalize gambling. I think that would have been a better sell, like a really short-cropped, well-spoken.
Yeah.
Or could have been a lady. Fuck, this film needs a leading lady. Come on. Just somebody who was like really businesslike rather than, I offered them $6 million. I guess I'm just going to have to kill them.
So, yeah, interestingly, for the role of, again, older, for washed-up football star Jimmy Dix, none other than Mad Mel Gibson.
So he'd be the football player. Who would he be against? We've got Danny Glover.
Well, that's
Danny Glover is the detective, and Mel Gibson is the washed-up thing. Yep, shut up and take my money.
Well, it's interesting to think that obviously whether the race card did come into play of, well, let's look at, how successful is 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon. We've got to have that black and white dynamic. And obviously you've got plenty of amazing black athletes and sports stars. So it's not too much of a leap, but it's interesting that Mel Gibson was, again, I imagine, I always see Mel Gibson as older, but I suppose if you were a washed up football star, you could kind of get away with it.
Well, I mean, I'd say definitely, rather than say the black card, definitely the race card is being played, is that they wanted a black and white dynamic. So that's interesting. You're backing that up saying, oh, well, it could be the footballer. It could be the footballer. I think they're probably entertaining both ideas. Because this is a thought that did occur to me watching this film, is because this comes from a place of love of all of the hard work that we've seen Damon Wayans do, and the Wayans brothers generally in their comedy. But I was questioning his decision because, as you say, the first half of this role, he's like so. The second half, he kind of comes into his own. So, were there other actors considered for his role? Which role were any of the roles locked in? We're talking about actors that would be considered. Who was locked? Because I didn't know why, but I just assumed this was a Brucey film.
Well, I think it was quite. I think he was,
or it definitely changed as soon as it became a Brucey film.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think obviously at this point, Joel Silver, who's producing it, was very close. Well, obviously he produced Lethal Weapon as well, so you imagine he can quickly pick up the phone to Mel Gibson as well. But I think him and Bruce Willis at that time had a partnership, but funnily enough, it goes on to the fallout of this film. So Joel Silver, I don't think he ever worked again with Bruce Willis after this, or Tony Scott. And Charlie, what would Tony Scott go on to make after this? True Romance. And what we talked about, the Hollywood movie mogul that crops up in True Romance, it's
supposed to be Joel Silver.
Could be modeled on somebody.
So now I'm starting to think of the character Lee from True Romance actually be shouting about the rewrites and dealing with Bruce Willis and stuff. That's a film to be made. That's a fly in the wall sort of Tropic Thunder film to be made where Joel Silver's there. But yeah, all I was going to say in terms of mentioning True Romance is, I don't think we would have had True Romance if he'd not learned the good and the bad on this film.
Yeah, and I think that's it. So I think
Lee.
Tony Scott. So yeah, I think Joel Silver did burn a few bridges on this. And one final coulda, woulda, shoulda, because I have to mention it because it could have gone very differently. But apparently Tony Scott wanted none other than Grace Jones to play the role of Corey.
There was somebody else I thought you might be talking about.
No, Charlie, no. We just got Crazy Grace. I could be the girlfriend. Yes. So
is that it for Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda?
That's it for Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda. So yeah, I was just going to jump back to box office. So I think this film did average, I think so. It was a budget of around 40 million and then total worldwide gross of 114 million. So I heard
it bombed. I thought maybe are you taking into account VHS rentals? Because I heard it
underperformed given Brucey's star power and obviously the price, the hype around Shane Black and the hype around the film. I think it did underperform in that notion, but I think it was it did give Brucey and Joel Silver that sort of a bit of a boost that they needed. And yeah, I think it was a hit on video.
But I'm just saying, I'm talking specifically about the numbers that you're talking about there. It's what we've seen, that great cut of Matt Damon explaining about how the dynamics of
the home video.
That so much money was made on home video, it was included in the release figures. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is that this film, you say, oh, well, it's only done so much in the theaters, but actually it'll probably wash its face when it gets on the video. Whereas now they're like, it's got to make it in its first year or wherever it goes out.
Yeah.
So where do we go now? Where do we go? Wow. Sorry, Geffen Pictures just had to.
Well, actually, I would say we haven't talked about the soundtrack. Obviously, it's our good friend Michael Kamen, and apparently, even he says
Michael Kamen. I don't know why you would assume that. Did you spot some of his other films in there?
It's the License to Kill, it's the Lethal Weapon, it's the Roadhouse. It's all seeping through. But even he says he hated this film, but he only did it as a favor to Bruce Willis and Joel Silver. But unlike, maybe that's what this film's missing. I mean, you've got the sort of gung ho America football song at the start, but maybe it is missing maybe a Bruckheimer sassy pop song to tie it all together.
I feel like I mean, I've only read this recently because I was like, what the hell is that first scene all about? And it's like, oh, it's a satire on the whole TV thing about Friday night footballs are good plays. And you can tell that it's done in a sort of like homage satire of the boss, of like Bruce Springsteen. It is that sort of red, white, and blue thing. It's funny to think that was it 80? When did we have Rocky 4? Was it 89?
No, 85.
Shit! Wow, but it's that type of present that that whole presentation. We've got a big show going on, so let's have some glossy music and trumpets. But yeah, I feel like it was missing another number, and this was something, I guess it was there. There was pop hit record links with films, so there wasn't one linked with this film. Really,
no, but yeah. So I say, just in terms of final notes, I think in terms of Shane Black films or scripts, it's fairly low down the pecking order. I'd say it's mid-tier Brucey. Obviously, he's done some like proper stinkers, action stinkers. I think he did Striking Distance was like a couple of years later.
Which was the film where he's a boat cop with?
That's Striking Distance.
That is boring and just dull.
Really dull.
And it's like he's John McClane on his pension, and his wife's left him, and he can't even get hard to a young
Sarah Jessica Parker. So yeah, Brucey's had more stinkers. Obviously there is, I say, in terms of Tony Scott's career, I think this is like lower tier Tony Scott, but again, his career towards the end wasn't like that great. I mean, obviously for me, I think one of the best films he did was later in his career was Man on Fire. But
I think that's his portfolio piece for me. But I feel like this was Training Wheels. True Romance was him and Quentin, him working with a different writer, like trying something different. Him and Quentin obviously benefiting from that Quentin Tarantino. And then, Man on Fire. Wow. So I don't know. Is there anything else you think needs to be said? But just talk.
No. I think we've covered all the key points.
I just think the last thing I'd like to say is full respect to Tony Scott, who's no longer with us. Yeah, I mean, what can we say? Just Top Gun. We've talked about it enough. He's made a lot of films that mean a lot to both of us here. So
it does make me me think. I do miss him because I miss
what he could have done, because I've just heard we've got Gladiator 2 coming out, which is nuts.
Well, that's Ridders. I mean, Ridders is still going.
No, but I'm saying the fact that Ridley Scott's still going, I'm like, imagine if Tony Scott was still around. Like, imagine he would really be taking action crime dramas to another level. That's what
I think that's why Man on Fire is so good, because he was still innovating and trying to do different stuff, like the stuff that they do with the subtitles and stuff like that. It's a really innovative. I mean, obviously it's dated a bit since I watched it again recently, but it's still brilliant piece of cinema. I say that's one of his high points. I
haven't watched it in a while. Have you seen that they have the complete cash grab they've done for Equalizer 3?
You mean why is no one calling it Threequalizer? That's my gripe about it.
You should work in the movie industry. For me, I was really let down. I loved the first one. I was like, it's the unofficial Jack Reacher film for me. The first Equalizer film. The second one, apart from Pedro Pascal, was really meh. So Threequalizer, he's reuniting with
Dakota Fanning. Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was a good bit of casting. But yeah, I haven't heard. I think people saying it's okay. But so next up will be Halloween. So I think we can reveal. We've talked about it long enough. We are going to do horror classic John Carpenter's The Thing. So we're
doing Halloween. So for Halloween, we're doing The Thing.
Yeah, but I'm springing this on you because I think we should do a John Carpenter special on Patreon, as you and I have never watched it. We should do John Carpenter's Halloween.
To be fair, I thought that's what you just said when you said we're doing Halloween. I was like, yeah, I know we're doing John Carpenter, but I know we're doing thing. I'm up for both, and I'm excited to watch Halloween because I've never watched it before.
So yeah, we're doing The Thing on the regular podcast, and we'll do Halloween as a patron special. So yeah, we've got that coming up. I think we're going to have lots to say about The Thing. Obviously, it's a Kurt Russell film, but it's also probably my favorite horror film. So yes,
definitely my favorite. For me, it's a perfect marriage of horror and sci-fi. About Halloween
and Brucey, not Brucey, Kurt,
the gorgeous Kurt with and also our
Keith David.
Puppet Man. No, the model.
Rob Bottin, and yes, the marvelous animatronics.
Yeah. So look forward to that, ladies and gentlemen. And with Halloween, we will try not to just talk about Jamie Lee Curtis' amazing assets. So I guess you know where to find us. We are wherever you're hearing this. We are also on the creaky old internet at retroramble.blog. You can catch us on all of the social medias. Anything else, George? Anything else we need to plug before we sign off?
No, just the usual. Thank you for listening. Leave us a review if you have the chance, because it does help us out in terms of being visible on these podcast platforms. Or just tell a friend. Recommend, if you like what you hear, recommend Retro Ramble to a friend, a colleague, a pen pal.
Technically speaking, you can just go on Apple Podcasts, hit review, click 5-star, and type thanks, and then save. Job done. So, for this episode, I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.